Good morning, ladies and gents. Hope you're all well. You join me embarking in the middle of a council estate. Looking at Tudor Road, now on to Sisley Road, and looking at Eastbury Manor house, a Tudor manor house that was once originally in the middle of the countryside as part of a big farm. It's funny, isn't it, to have this old Tudor manor house in the middle of a council estate, but thankfully it survives. The house itself dates from the late 1560s to 1570s and was built for Clement Sisley, Esquire, a rich London merchant that had property in Queenhithe in London, also in East Ham. While this house was being built, he was living at East Ham, and while they lived at East Ham, they worshipped at Barking St Margaret's, and while they lived here they worshipped there too. Clement Sisley married his third wife, Anne, and there was a big age gap between the two of them, and I mean big age gap. Our final part will cover the lives of the Sisleys, but yeah, it's an absolutely fascinating one. And truth be told, I did film this one recently and I was totally unhappy with the way the filming went, so I've deleted those and we've come back and we're starting again. So yeah, we're going to have a walk around the outside of the house. Off we go. This is a several-parter. This one's going to be a good few parts. I know a few of you have been looking forward to seeing this one, so I hope you'll all enjoy it as much as I did on the first visit, and will hopefully do so again on this one. See, what it is with places like this, you get a lot of descriptions and things, and I pan in on them and don't always read them out. And when I proof watched the filming back, it would have been impossible for you ladies and gents to read the descriptive history. So I'm coming back and we shall read it out for you. I'm deliberately walking you around this way because you get a really nice view of the house from the back as well. It has 3 little gardens, or decent gardens, that we can visit. One of them we are walking past now. Has the private family garden and then an inner courtyard type affair, all of which we'll cover. As I say, I did cover this one before and I know a fair bit about it now. I've done the research, particularly on the family. Interesting family, and they've big ties to Barking St Margaret's. So as I say, with our last part, that will be on the lives of the Sisleys, which will be some original documents or copies of original documents, parish records from the 1500s and whatnot, what life and death was like in this era. And this is why I've brought you round here. This is the back of the house. Let's pan you out a minute. Here we go. This bit I think you will enjoy as much as me. It did originally have 2 of those, but one of them got pulled down in the 1800s. This house became used as stables and a dairy, and really fell into disrepair and was almost lost until the National Trust took it over in the early 20th century. So a big thank you to the National Trust for saving this one. So we carry on. Young hoodlums come tearing round that corner like spitting hot fat. These walls are original to the house, and when we do the private family garden, you will like well, you may do. I did, and I don't like bees. You will like what we see there. Hark back to an age when sugar really in this country was only just taking off and was incredibly expensive to both produce and buy. In its day, this house stood literally like a little beacon out in the countryside. It was the only brick building for many miles around, and the Sisleys were quite wealthy, and to have a house built from brick, entirely from brick in those days, was quite something. To also have that house glazed every room, which it was also something as well. Sisleys were known for their hospitality. Some of the people who came later weren't so hospitable, shall we say. Yeah. Each segment will be around 30 to 35 minutes. I don't know how many parts there will be. Sisley Road, of course named for the Sisleys, Clement Sisley. We've covered a lot of Barking and Dagenham's history recently, which you're going to be seeing. Of the two manors or mansions that we cover, this is the youngest one. You've got this one, which is the Tudor era, 1560s, 70s, and then after this one you've got Vallance House, which dates back to the 1200s originally, and the de Valence family. The land we're standing on here in Barking, near Ripple Road, and the land we stand on at Dagenham when we go to Vallance House, all of that land was owned by the great Abbey of Barking. And these estates were as well. Before this was a mansion or a manor house, there was a big farming estate here called Eastbury that was tithed out to the abbey. When the abbey was closed down and dissolved in the dissolution of the monasteries, these places were all sold off, and it passed hands, the land, and then eventually came into the hands of Clement Sisley in the 1560s, who decided to build this lovely manor house here. So I shall pause you for a minute while I have a smoke, because it should be many hours until I can have one again, because this place takes a lot to cover. Anyway, join me back here in a sec. And we are back at the front. Now we leave the modern council estate all around us. We should be going back into the Sisleys world and leaving the rain behind as well, because it just started raining, which is not very nice. Love old places like this, the old chimneys and everything, amazing. We've got an information board here. Making a good impression, the north face of Eastbury. This is the main front intended by Clement Sisley to impress his visitors. No expense was spared on this high status building. When Eastbury was built between 1557 and 1573, bricks were a relatively new building material. They were expensive to make, so only the greatest Tudor houses were built from them. It was also rare for houses to have glass in their windows, again because of cost. All of Eastbury's many windows were glazed. Clement Sisley and his guests would have approached the house from a track to your right, just beyond the hedge, and the double gate. The track linked to Ripple Road to Eastbury's farmyard and barns Behind you in the area of Ripple Road, there were rabbit warrens and a house for the warrener who looked after them. Rabbits were kept for their fur and meat. In 1615, there was also a banqueting house in the garden. So yeah. And the face of Eastbury, this facade hasn't changed really in all those years. The only different thing is when you would have come in those days, above the door here, where this circle is, Pride of Place, would have been the Sisley coat of arms once he was granted it. Feet, and in we shall go. And another nice thing about coming today is that we catch it in Christmas mode. So, and in we shall go. Hiya. A sense of arrival. Clement Sisley's family and guests would have used the same doorway that you have entered today. Eastbury was completed in the 1570s, and the decorative moulding bricks around the porch were to impress Sisley's visitors. On entering the house, Eastbury's Tudor guests would have come into the hallway, screened off from the Great Hall. This hallway gave access to the kitchen and working areas of the house, but there was no access to the upper floor. The entrance to the hallway, the present staircase, and the wall beside it placed the screened passage in the 19th century. And when you come into the house, it's best to start off in this room you're always advised, which is the buttery. A new mansion. Appearance was everything to the Tudor gentleman, and the traveller passing Eastbury on the Ripple Road would have been left in no doubt that a person of quality and fashion lived here. The house was built of red brick, with darker black bricks were used to create diamond and heart-shaped patterns on the outside walls. To accentuate the brickwork, the surroundings of every window, the edges of the tower, staircases, and the surrounds of the main entrance were all plastered in fine lime to make them appear like stone. Most of the building materials used at Eastbury were sourced locally. Bricks and tiles are known to have been made in Barking, Dagenham and Ilford. Unusual features such as the windows were made by specialists working in London. A Tudor window maker at work, each piece of glass was individually fitted into the frames. Chimneys and fireplaces replacing smoky open hearths and braziers were a recent innovation at the time when Eastbury was being built. Logs were transported to a carpenter's yard, called a framing yard. The carpenters carved marks and numbers into the timbers as they cut and shaped them. They would have then been transported to Eastbury building site and reassembled, matching the marks and numbers together. You can still see some of these marks in the roof timbers in the east attic. The chimneys were designed to be seen and admired from far away. Inside, elaborately carved fire surrounds the grace to the rooms. Glass was then an expensive luxury, but Eastbury was fully glazed, and handmade diamond-shaped glass was set into the lead cames to make each glazed unit. How old is the roof? Old houses can be dated by a technique called dendrochronology, or tree ring dating. In spring and summer, trees were growing fast, creating a light coloured wood, but as the growth slows down in the winter, the wood becomes darker. This creates a series of dark rings within the pale wood. Using the wood from the modern trees, old buildings and archaeological sites, a sequence of tree rings can be created that runs from the modern times to the distant past. By comparing the wood from Eastbury's roof to this sequence, it was discovered that most of the trees had been used that had cut down in 1566. The buttery and underfloor storage. A list of household contents written in 1603 identifies this room as the buttery, named after the butts or barrels that were stored here. Today, what you see is the fireplace, skirting boards, coping and picture rail dating from the later conversion of the buttery into a living room. Beneath your feet is the cellar used in Tudor times as cool storage. Foodstuffs and drinks were stored on racks, often in wooden barrels to keep them off the floor. The cellar has good ventilation, but the floor can become damp in wet weather because of the high water table. Today the cellar is used as a plant room. Here's that fireplace. And the skirting boards that you can see. And most amazingly of all, you get to see what Eastbury was like back in Sisley's day. As I said in the intro, this was the younger of the two ones we visited recently. Valence House is the older and really interesting, but you need quite a bit of time to take in that one because there's a lot in there. Absolutely fascinating. And this is what Eastbury would have looked like in Clement Sisley's day. Sisley's country estate, the skyline of the local landscape changed forever when Clement Sisley built his fine house at Eastbury Hall. Whether viewed from Ribble Road, the River Thames or Barking Creek, the red brick house with its chimneys and stair turrets stood out from the flat marshland and fields. Sunlight reflected off the glazed windows and shiny dapper brickwork. There would have been no difficulty picking out the Sisley residence. Sadly, Clement Sisley lived here for only 5 years after the completing Eastbury Hall. He died in 1578, leaving the house to his wife Anne for her lifetime, and the farm and tithes to his eldest son Thomas. And where we was outside surrounded by a council estate, this is what it would have looked like back then. And this is the Ripple Road and the track takes you in. If you watch the very last instalment of this, where we go into the lives of the Sisleys, you'll see that journey on old maps. Eastbury Tide Barn in 1917, that no longer exists. The Barley Barn at Cressing Temple. This barn, built in 1206, is thought to be similar to the one at Eastbury. The interior of the Eastbury Tithe Barn, 1917. A working farm. The new house and its private gardens occupied only a small part of the estate. The remainder continued as a farming estate managed by tenant farmers. The land was a mixture of open grassland and fields, growing cereal crops. The marshes nearer the river provided excellent grazing. There were 2 warrens where rabbits were reared for their fur and meat. The tithe barn was enlarged about this time, providing more space to store grain, hay and straw. Other buildings housed animals. A very different world, eh? Imagine that. When Clement Sisley built the house, there were no other houses nearby. Only fields and marshes. Eastbury was the tallest house in the area. Look at the painting. What could Owl see from the top of the house? Quite a lot. And when we go into the last part, this will feature in it of our little journey. Family life at Eastbury. Clement Sisley, his third wife Anne Argyle, and their 3 children moved into their completed home in the 1570s. Little is known about Clement's family, although they are believed to originate from Fountains in North Yorkshire. He was born in the 1520s, probably brought up in Kent. Anne Argyle was the only daughter of Thomas Argyle, 1500 to 1563, a prominent government administrator and servant to the king. Anne Sisley would have supervised the running of the household. She may have spent her spare time reading, embroidering and entertaining guests or strolling in the private garden. They had at least 8 servants who carried out household duties such as cooking, cleaning, tending fires and looking after the family's clothes. You are cordially invited. Eastbury Hall was likely to have been the venue for the wedding party of Clement Sisley's daughter Mary. She married Abacook Harmon at St Margaret's Church in August 1571. The Great Hall would have been decorated with flowers as the proud parents welcomed their guests. Clement Sisley makes a toast to his daughter Anne and her new husband Abacook at their wedding breakfast in the Great Hall of Eastbury. And if you watch the final instalment, you'll see the copy of the original document for that marriage, as well as some christening documents, burials and things like that. A gentleman's duties. Clement Sisley was known as a gentleman. He had a coat of arms and built a fine house, both signs of his social standing. His profession described him as a servant to the Chancellor. It is unclear but indicates government administration and law. He made money buying and selling land in Kent and Essex, Dorset and London. Clement's wealth and status brought with it community responsibilities. As a justice of the peace, he administered the law and order in Essex courts. In 1574, he examined Mother Arnold, accused of being a witch and enchantress. Strangely, as he proclaimed her warrant for prison, his legs suddenly gave way beneath him, causing injuries for which he was caused to use crutches until well after the woman's execution at Barking. The Sisley household was recorded in 1552 visitation of Essex. Officials called the Herald visited gentlemen in the county and recorded their family trees and checked them for accidental mistakes or lies. And here is that coat of arms. Eastbury Manor House, Barking, Essex, Clement Sisley, AD 1572. The coat of arms of Clement Sisley, including 3 white goats, their horns and hooves gilded with gold. And we take one last look at the Sisley's world, what it would have been like in their day.
This was just a group, so this was because we were both spending together. But if you're on your own, it would just be your. Oh, so you've got a card for a group? No, you both apart. That's James's work, isn't it?
I was doing an Asda room and I had to get some normal and I thought, I'll get decaf as well while that's it.
Roast meat and good broth. Imagine the heat from the blazing kitchen fire and crackle and smell of roasting meat. This is the original kitchen fireplace where Clement Sisley's cook would have stirred boiling pots of broth, turned the meat on a spit over the fire. What looks like the cupboard of the fireplace is a warming oven. The brickwork in the right hand side of the chimney suggests that there may have been a second oven. The angled beam above has hooks where meat and other foodstuffs would have been hung to keep them away from dogs and cats and vermin. Oh, that sounds nice. A view of good pasturage. Clement Sisley built Eastbury on the edge of the higher ground with open views of the River Thames. From this window you would have seen the farmyard, barns and other farm buildings, animals grazing on the marshes. When the houses were built, this view disappeared forever. The room may have been the office of the farm manager or the steward. The wood panelling suggests that there was a fairly important room and gives an impression of what some of the Eastbury's other rooms may have looked like in Tudor times. The floor is at a higher level than the kitchen to provide headroom for the cellar below. And that's this room. Oh yeah, look at the wood panelling, it's lovely. And as it said when the houses were built, the view was lost forever.
then you over. So
Join me for part two as we go into the Great Hall.